Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, welcome to the class of Introduction to Logic and Critical Thinking. I'm your resource person, Ali Ahmed from Southern Business School, University of Southern Punjab, Multan. Dear students, today we are going to study an interesting topic, and today we are going to discuss the four kinds of categorical propositions: quality, quantity, and distribution. In this session, we will be diving deeper into the four kinds, and especially we will be focusing on their quality, quantity, and distribution. These are essential concepts in formal logic and will help you to understand how different types of categorical statements relate to one another and how they function. Not only how they function, but we will also see that how they operate within the logical arguments. By the end of this lecture, you people will be having a clear understanding of four forms of categorical propositions and how their quality and quantity can influence the logical validity of syllogisms. Let us first have a recap of the four kinds of categorical propositions that we discussed in the last lecture. Categorical propositions come in four distinct types. Each type has a specific structure and represents a different logical relationship between a subject and a predicate. The four forms that we discussed include the A form, that is universal affirmative, the E form, that is universal negative, the I form, that is particular affirmative, and the O form, that is particular negative. These are the four forms of categorical propositions, but to understand them more fully, we need to understand and we need to consider the quality, quantity, and the distribution of these propositions. Categorical propositions in the context of quality refer to whether the proposition is affirmative or negative. Affirmative propositions state that the subject class is included in the predicate class. For example, all humans are mortal, that is the A form. It affirms that all humans are included in the class of mortal beings. Negative propositions state that the subject is excluded from the predicate class. For instance, no humans are immortal, that is the E form. Basically, it denies that the humans are included in the class of immoral beings. Let us discuss the quality parameter in detail. When we get to know about the A form, that is the universal affirmative, the quality is affirmative because it asserts that every member of the subject class is also a member of predicate class. In the case of the E form, that is universal negative, the quality is negative because it denies any overlap between the subject and the predicate classes. In the case of the I form, that is particular affirmative, the quality is affirmative because it asserts that at least some members of the subject class are included in the predicate class. And in the final form, that is particular negative, referred to as the O form, the quality is negative because it denies that some members of the subject class are included in the predicate class. The another aspect that we need to discuss about the categorical propositions is the quantity of these categorical propositions. Quantity refers to how much of the subject class is being discussed. There are two types of quantity, the universal and the particular. In the universal quantity parameter, the statement applies to every member of the subject class, whereas in the particular aspect of the quantity, the statement applies to only some members of the subject class. Let us discuss the concept of quality in detail for every form. In the A form, that is universal affirmative, the quantity is universal, meaning that the statement applies to every member of the subject class. For example, all dogs are mammals. This applies universally to every dog. In the E form, that is universal negative, the quantity is also universal as it denies that any member of the subject class is included in the predicate class. For instance, no dogs are reptiles. Now this applies universally to literally every dog. The third form, that is the I form, particular affirmative, the quantity in that very particular form is particular, meaning that it applies to only some members of the subject class. For instance, some cats are black. This applies to some cats, not all. And finally, moving toward the fourth form, that is the O form, particular negative, the quantity is particular as it applies to only some members of the subject class. For example, some birds are not migratory. This applies to only some birds. Now we are going to discuss another parameter of the categorical propositions, that is the distribution of terms in categorical propositions. Distribution refers to the extent to which a term, that is subject or predicate, refers to all members of its own class. A term is distributed when it refers to all members of its class. A term is undistributed when it refers to only some members of its class. Let me repeat it. A term is considered to be distributed when it refers to all members of its class, whereas a term is considered to be undistributed when it refers to only some members of the class. Distribution of the subject and predicate. Let us discuss about these two. In the subject term, if the subject term is distributed, or we may say that the subject term is distributed if the statement refers to all members of the subject class. In the case of predicate term, the predicate term is distributed if the statement refers to the all members of the predicate class. Let's break this down for each of the four kinds of categorical propositions, that is the A, E, I, O combination. In the A form, that is universal affirmative, subject is distributed. The subject terms refer to all members of the subject class. Predicate, on the other hand, is undistributed. The predicate term is not referring to all members of the predicate class. For example, all dogs are mammals. All dogs are included in the class of mammals, but this statement doesn't claim that all mammals are dogs. In the case of the E form, that is universal negative, the subject is distributed. That is, the subject term refers to all members of the subject class. Predicate is distributed. The predicate, just like subject, it is distributed as well. The predicate term refers to all members of the predicate class. For instance, no dogs are reptiles. Now, both dogs and reptiles are fully referred to in this proposition. In the I form, that is particular affirmative, the subject is undistributed. The subject term refers to only some members of the subject class, and similarly the predicate is undistributed as well. The predicate term again refers to only some members of the predicate class. For example, some birds are blue. We are not claiming that all the birds are blue, nor that all the things that are blue are the birds as well. Finally, there is the O form, that is the particular negative. Here the subject is undistributed. The subject term refers to only some members of the subject class. The predicate here is distributed. Unlike subject, the predicate term refers to all members of the predicate class. For instance, we can quote an example like some dogs are not friendly. Now this denies that all dogs are friendly, but it doesn't claim that all dogs are unfriendly, just some. Now let us see what are the practical implications of the quality, quantity and distribution. Dear students, understanding the quality, quantity and the distribution of categorical propositions basically help us to make more accurate logical decisions. These concepts are not just abstract, they have real implications when it comes to evaluating the validity of syllogisms. For example, when you are evaluating whether a syllogism is valid, you will need to check how the terms are distributed across the premises and how that affects the conclusion. If a term is undistributed in a premise but then distributed in the conclusion, there might be an error in the reasoning. So dear students, in today's lecture, before I wrap it up, we have explored the four kinds of categorical propositions and looked closely how their quality, quantity and distribution can affect their logical relationships. Dear students, these concepts are a key to understand syllogistic logic and reasoning, as they help us structure valid arguments and recognize invalid ones. Quality tells us whether a proposition is affirmative or negative. Quantity tells us whether the statement applies universally or particularly. And the distribution basically helps us to understand the extent to which the terms refer to all or some members of their respective classes. In our next lecture, we will explore how these propositions function in syllogistic reasoning, basically enabling us to draw conclusions based on the relationships between categorical terms. Thank you for joining, and I look forward to our next class. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.